All right, let's review the CAFs for the Pierce Contender. We've already done the setup as part of our pump setup procedure, but let's talk specifically about CAFs. A couple reminders that anytime you're going to engage CAFs, you need to make sure the engine RPM is below 1,000. And then the air pressure is below 20. You can find that air pressure gauge on the CAFs panel. Next step is to make sure each individual switch is off for each discharge. Those are located right above the water valve discharges. So now that we've made sure all those are off, we're going to check on the CAFs panel that the switch is selected to foam. And now we're ready to turn the compressor on. You'll immediately hear the compressor kick on, and you'll see the air pressure go up to 120, or it should equal the discharge pressure that we're using. Once the CAFs is on, with the compressor is turned on, we can turn the foam system on. So you find that on the foam panel, and you'll see a red light come on to tell you that the foam system is engaged. When we're doing fire attack with CAFs, we want to use 0.5%. It should say Class A 0.5% on the foam panel. So again, just a reminder, this is Class A foam, and we're using it for fire attack. And so now we're ready to charge the line. So select the line that you want to use CAFs with, and you're going to open that line to the first screw. So we've opened the valve to the first screw, which is going to give us about 90 gallons per minute of water. That's also already mixed with foam, and now we're ready to use the CAFs. So we can turn the individual discharge on for CAFs for that individual line. That air pressure is going to enter the line and agitate the foam, and now you're ready to use foam. All right, let's go over the Husky 10 foam system on the Pierce Contender. The first thing that we're going to do when we're using these is to switch the system on. And we've already done that through our process of setting up the pump. You'll notice when you switch it on, there's a system on light that comes on one side of the foam panel. On the other side, there's a foam pump. That light won't be on until we're actually flowing foam and the foam pump is in use. So it should be off right now. Once we've got the system on, let's just talk about a couple of the things that it can do. First of all, it should come up at 0.5%, which is the percentage that we'd like to use when we're doing fire attack. If we want to change that percentage for any reason, first thing we'll do is press enter, and then use the up and down arrow keys to select the percentage we want. When we're done, hit enter again, and it'll keep that percentage. Let's look at the modes that are available to us on the foam panel. Press mode will get us to the next mode, which is telling us our Class A foam and what percentage we're using. Press it again, and it'll tell us how we can draft Class A, and this is if we want to put a bucket of Class A foam on the ground and draft directly out of it. Generally, we're not going to be doing that on this engine. We're going to be using the foam tank. Press mode again, and we'll get to drafting Class B foam. Similar operation with a Class B bucket on the ground that we're drafting out of directly, and you can change your percentage the same way. This engine will generally not be using Class B foam through the system, but it is possible. Let's press mode again, and we'll go into prime. So in the scenario that you run the foam tank out of foam, and you need to reprime the foam pump, we would use this mode. Press mode again, and we're into flush mode. So if we wanted to change from Class A to Class B foam, we need to go through the flush mode, which it flushes all the existing foam out of the pump plumbing. Press it again, and we're going to filling tank A. We're going to go through that step by step in our next video. So let's hit mode again. And we get back to the beginning of manual mode, which we're not going to use. And the last one is the setup mode, which we're also not going to be using. Press mode again gets us to the start. Let's look at the displays that are available. If we press display, it's going to show us the water flow in gallons per minute through the 3 CAFs lines. And that's a cumulative gallons per minute. So if you have multiple lines open, it's going to show you the total GPM. Let's press that again. And we can see the Class A foam that we're flowing right now in gallons per minute, and that's the foam concentrate. Our total water being flowed through our foam lines is available. Press it again, and we get to our total gallons of Class A concentrate that we're using. Next is Class B, which again, we don't have a Class B tank that we're using here. But if we had the foam panel selected to Class B, that would tell us how many gallons of Class B we're using. Press display again, and we get to our Class A percentage in gallons per minute. To fill the Class A foam on the Pierce Contender, we're going to go to station 33, which is where all that foam's kept for now. When you go in the door, be sure you turn the alarm off, and then you can get ready to fill. So to fill the Class A foam, you'll first need the tube, which is located on the crow's nest above the pump panel. You'll make that connection on the driver's side pump panel, and then place the wand in the 55-gallon drum of Class A foam concentrate. Once you get that in place, you can turn the foam inlet valve to the on position, and then you have to turn the foam inject to foam fill, and that's located down to the lower right side of the pump panel. You'll see there's two valves in there. One says foam inject and foam fill, and the other says foam inject. So the forward one should say foam fill, and the rear facing one should say foam inject. And now you're ready to go to the pump panel and start filling the foam tank. Once you're up at the pump panel, we're going to turn the foam system on, and then use the mode button to select Class A fill. Once we get to tank A fill, we'll hit enter. You can see the foam pump's turned on now, and the tank will be filled with Class A concentrate. Once the tank's full, it'll say tank A full, and the foam level lights will indicate full. Now we're ready to turn the system off, and we can disconnect from the filling. Once the foam A tank is filled, you can head back down to the driver's side, and we're ready to disconnect the foam hose. First we got to turn the valve off, and then we can disconnect the hose. There'll be some foam that drips out, so we'll try and drain most of that back into the 55-gallon drum, and then set the hose and wand aside. Let's replace the cap on the foam intake just so we minimize the amount of drips. And the last thing we need to do is reset the valve to foam inject. So again, that's located in the bottom right-hand side of the driver's side pump panel. Make sure both of those valves say foam inject. You can close that compartment, and we're ready to hit the road. All right, to operate the deck gun on a Pierce Contender can be done from the pump panel. So as the operator, you can press the up on the extender. It's an Elkhart extender automatic nozzle. So that'll raise the deck gun to where you can operate it from. Once it's raised, over on the right side of the pump panel is the operating switches. You can go left, right, up, down. So you aim the deck gun where you'd like it to go, and then you can open the discharge for the deck gun. The discharge is an electronic valve located to the left of the pressure governor. Once you're done flowing from the deck gun, you'll close it with that same valve, and then you can either bring the deck gun down to the stow position manually, or you can press and hold the stow button for 3 seconds, and it'll automatically return to the stowed position. Once the deck gun is moved to the stowed position, you can go back to that Elkhart extender controller, which is to the left of the intake gauge, and press down and it'll stow itself. To tilt the cab on the Pierce Contender, first you need to swing the front intake out of the way to make sure we don't damage the cab. Then you walk over to the officer's side underneath the pump panel and open the compartment to operate the cab tilt. With the batteries on, you're going to switch the valve towards the center of the engine, and then operate the switch that'll raise the cab. Anytime we're raising the cab, we just double check that we've got everything inside secured, all the air packs, map books, gas monitors, flashlights, and always double check your overhead that you have clearance, especially if you're raising the cab inside the station. Once the cab's raised all the way, we're going to place the bar in there so that we can work safely underneath the cab. Once the bar's in place, we're ready to do our Saturday checks and work underneath the cab. To lower the cab, we're going to replace the bar and go back over to right below the pump panel to lower it. Lowering the cab is a little bit of a tricky part, and so we'll grab that valve and start to move it towards the front position, and you'll see the cab start to lower. If you move that valve too far, the cab's going to stop lowering, and to get it to lower again, you'll have to switch the valve to the raise position and operate the switch to raise it slightly. Once you've raised it slightly, you can again find that sweet spot as you lower it down. Once the cab's lowered all the way down, you'll switch that valve towards the side position. And the directions are written on the compartment cover.